Everyone in town knew the state park had a bit of a reputation. It wasn't just the usual stories about wild animals or getting lost in the woods. People whispered about assaults and strange encounters that had happened there. Still, I'd been to that park countless times with friends and classmates, and nothing bad ever happened to us. In fact, I had a lot of good memories from that place. Riding bikes down the dirt trails, setting off homemade works bombs in the woods, and fishing by the lake until sunset. But that changed on Halloween during my senior year at Van High. That's when my best friend Ian and I saw the darker side of Van Ban State Park. The summer before, I had enlisted in the Army National Guard, so I was trying to stay in shape. That afternoon, around 4 o'clock, I asked Ian if he wanted to join me for a trail run after school. He agreed since he liked working out too. When I pulled into the parking lot to wait for him, I noticed a beat-up silver car parked a few spaces over. Inside sat an older bald man who immediately made my stomach twist. Something about him was just off. I tried to brush it off, but when I glanced his way again, I realized he was staring straight at me, completely still, his eyes wide open, not blinking, not looking away. His expression was hard to read, somewhere between a frown and a grin, but whatever it was, it made my skin crawl. When our eyes met, he gave a small nod, like a greeting, but never broke his stare. I nodded back awkwardly and looked away, pretending to be busy on my phone. When I checked my mirror again, his eyes were still locked on me. That was it. I started the car and sped out of the lot. But when I looked in my rearview mirror, I saw the silver car following me. My heart pounded as I floored it all the way to the high school parking lot, weaving through streets until I finally lost him. I called Ian and told him to meet me there and warned him about the creepy guy. Then, just as my nerves started to settle, I got a text from Ian, "Here." My stomach sank. I drove back toward the park, hoping maybe the man had left. But when I pulled in, there was Ian's car, and just 2 spaces away sat the same silver car, the man inside still staring. I motioned for Ian to follow me in his car to another lot deeper into the park. We parked there and decided to check out the trail anyway, figuring we'd come too far to back out now. As we walked down the hill, I tried to shake the feeling that we were being watched. When we turned around to head back up, I noticed movement. His car again, slowly circling the lot like he was hunting for us. From where we stood on the hill, he couldn't see us, but we could see him. We waited for a few minutes until the car finally disappeared. Ian and I looked at each other, 2 athletes against one creepy guy. We figured we could handle ourselves. Feeling a bit more confident, we decided to keep running. Still, I picked up a good-sized rock to carry, just in case. I never found out what that man's intentions were, but judging by his stare and that park's reputation, they couldn't have been good. These days, Ivy graduated from Van and serve as an infantryman in the National Guard while studying at Bowling Green State University. Sometimes when I visit home, I still drive by that park at night. There's something about it that pulls me back. The thrill, the memory, maybe the fear. I'm always armed now, and I stay alert. But even so, that place still makes me uneasy. I've promised myself that if I ever run into something like that again, I won't stick around to find out how it ends. My advice to anyone heading into a state park: always bring something for protection, know how to defend yourself, and never, ever go alone. In my room at home, right next to my bed, there's a large storage closet. It doesn't have a normal door with hinges or a handle, just a flat wooden panel you can lift off by grabbing the edges. I was 19 the first time it happened. I woke up one morning to find the panel had fallen off and was leaning against my bed. It wasn't that unusual since the door didn't fit tightly, so I just pushed it back into place and got ready for school. The next night, around 4 in the morning, I woke up again. Something had made a noise. My heart skipped when I saw the same panel had fallen off and was leaning against the bed once more. I told myself it was probably loose and decided to leave it like that until morning. The night after that, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned for hours. Then came a loud thump. I already knew what it was. The door had fallen again. I sat up in frustration, ready to just leave it open from now on. That's when I heard it, the faint sound of a plastic bag rustling inside the closet. There was no draft in the room. Everything was still. My chest tightened as I reached for the light switch. When I flicked it on, I froze. Someone was inside the closet, peeking out from the darkness, eyes locked on mine. The second the light came on, he tried to duck out of view like I hadn't seen him. I couldn't move. My throat tightened before I finally managed to scream, "Dad!" My dad burst into the room within seconds. I pointed at the closet, shaking. He stepped inside, searching every corner, but came back out saying no one was there. I wanted to believe him, I really did. Still, I couldn't sleep in that room. I grabbed a blanket and lay on the floor of my parents' room. Just as I was starting to calm down, we all heard my bedroom door open. Then heavy footsteps running down the hall, down the stairs and out the front door. The door slammed so hard the walls shook. My parents and I rushed after the sound, but whoever it was had vanished. Later, when we checked the closet again, we discovered where he'd been hiding, inside an empty storage bin buried in the corner. Even now, that memory keeps me up some nights. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't in the woods. They're closer than you think. I'm a freshman in college now, but I came home this past week for a funeral. That trip brought back a strange memory from my senior year of high school, something I've never quite been able to explain. Back then, during study hall, I'd usually spend my time in the library working on computer science assignments. My laptop at home didn't have Jace Creator installed, so I'd use one of the few school computers that did. One day, a boy from my class sat down next to me because the same two computers had that program. He was hard not to notice. Tall, ghostly pale, with long black hair that hung over one eye. He wore an old anti-flag shirt, a ripped denim jacket, and scuffed Doc Martens. I'd never seen him talk to anyone or sit with anyone before. When I sat beside him, he looked up at me as if I'd done something unforgivable. I quickly looked away and pretended to dig through my backpack, hoping to shake off the awkwardness. While my head was down, I heard him chuckle under his breath and mutter something I couldn't make out. I froze for a second, unsure if he was talking to me or to himself. Maybe he was just frustrated with his code. I told myself that and tried to relax. When I logged in, I tried to make conversation. "She gives too much homework," I said lightly. "I can barely keep up." He didn't look at me. "You want the answers, don't you?" I gave a nervous laugh. "No thanks. I'd rather figure it out myself." Normally, I might have said yes, but something about his tone and that unsettling stare made me want to keep my distance. He laughed again, but it was this low, unsettling laugh that made my skin crawl. I closed my eyes for a second, cringing, and when I opened them again, he was gone. The odd thing was, he'd left his flash drive behind. I waited for about 10 minutes, but he never came back. Study hall ended at 1, and it was already 10 till, so I decided I'd return it to him the next day in class. That night, I tossed it into a little box on the shelf above my bed. It was a pretty cool flash drive, one of those Swiss Army knife kinds with a USB built in. Here's where things get strange. After that day, he stopped coming to school. At first, no one thought much of it. He had a reputation for skipping. But when graduation season rolled around in May and he still hadn't shown up, people started wondering. By then, I'd completely forgotten about the flash drive. Fast forward to a few days ago, I was home and needed a drive for my business class project. That's when I remembered his. I ran a Norton scan on it, just to be safe. It came back clean, so I figured I'd clear it out and use it. But before I deleted anything, curiosity got the best of me. The first folder I opened was labeled Computer Science. Inside were all the assignment answers from class, every single one. I thought maybe that's why he left it. Maybe he knew he wouldn't be back. The next folder was titled Music. I clicked through it, half expecting some dark metal playlist, but instead there were only 3 songs. Running on Empty by Jackson Browne, White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, and Helter Skelter by the Beatles. There was also an untitled folder. Inside, one named AP Literature. It was full of essays and random files, but one stood out. It was called The Best. When I opened it, all 10 pages were filled with his first and last name, written over and over in shaky handwriting. Then it got unsettling. Another folder contained photos, pictures of the school's emergency escape maps taped to classroom doors, a lit cigarette lying on the bathroom floor, and a pile of coins beside a yellow post-it that read "chump change" in block letters. But what really made my stomach drop was one photo, a picture of me sitting in English class, reading a book. He wasn't even in that class. There was also a document titled "Rest in Peace" too, but when I opened it, it was completely blank. I still don't know what to make of any of it. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe he realized he'd lost the flash drive and just never came back. Either way, I can't shake the feeling that something about it wasn't right. That's not the only strange thing that's happened to me. A few years earlier, when I was about 12, I had an experience that still creeps me out. My best friend Allie and I have been inseparable since 2nd grade. We did everything together. We were obsessed with ghost stories and anything paranormal. Whenever one of us heard a creak or a whisper in the dark, we'd convince ourselves it was haunted. One night around midnight, we decided to do a ghost hunt in my house. We used my dad's old touchscreen phone for video and my flip phone for recording sound, our own little ghost hunting setup. It was the only time we ever used it. My house was old, especially the basement. There was a big storage room, another room for the washer and dryer, and way in the back, a small cold room that no one ever went into. It always gave everyone a bad feeling. We went down the stairs with our flashlights, trying to act brave. We started asking questions like they do on TV. Is anyone here? Can you give us a sign? But after a while, we got bored and went back upstairs to watch the footage. We didn't see or hear anything unusual, so we laughed it off and started playing board games. Still, curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to watch it again, just in case we'd missed something. That's when things changed. The longer we watched, the heavier the air felt. Something about the video just didn't feel right. Then, as we turned the volume up, we heard footsteps, ones that didn't belong to us. And then, on the screen behind Allie, there was something. Some figure. It looked human, but not quite. Its body was warped, and its eyes glowed an eerie white that seemed to stare straight through the screen. We both screamed and shut off the camera. For a moment, neither of us could even speak. My dad was asleep, so we didn't dare wake him. Instead, we swore to keep it between us and never go down there again. Even now, years later, we sometimes dream about that night. Maybe it was our imagination, but maybe it wasn't. Either way, I'll never step foot in that basement again. That brings me to another memory. It was Halloween night in 2014. My name's Max, and I grew up in a small town near Findlay, Ohio. I went to Van Buren High School, a small place surrounded by fields and quiet roads. Most people there were kind, but like any town, there were shadows if you looked closely enough. Everyone knew the one place you didn't go after dark, Van Buren State Park. That's where the creeps liked to linger, and every small-town rumor led right back to those woods.